This is going to be a very different type of video to the ones I usually produce. This isn't me moving to a new format or anything. I still fully plan to do my usual comedy-based facecam videos. I've just chosen to do it this way because I have a lot of information I want to put across, and doing it this way makes it much easier than memorising a script and improvising like I usually do. This format is just a one-off. This video is just to point out a few things that I have noticed that concern me. Big changes are happening that will certainly make me raise an eyebrow. I just want to sort of give my interpretation of these changes and their purpose, but there are a few points I want to put across first. I don't consider myself to be an intellectual. As far as the whole politics side of YouTube goes, I have a sort of strange interpretation of my role in the whole thing. Picture YouTube politics being a TV show that is just the left, the right, and the skeptics all arguing with each other. Then there's a commercial break, and a comedian walks on stage, says a bunch of edgy shit, makes the audience laugh, then the show continues. Everyone keeps arguing with each other, and the comedian goes to an alleyway out the back to smoke weed. I'm that guy. That's how I see myself. I've never really been serious about anything, and I know, considering a lot of the jokes I make, some people can feel pretty confused as to what my stances are on many things. I don't mind clearing up a few things just now in a shorthand list kind of way. Things I support: a woman's right to choose, equality of opportunity, minimal government intervention, the free market, freedom of religion, freedom from religion, separation of church and state, gay marriage, fundamental basic human rights, a transparent government, having pride in your country, national service, universal free healthcare with the option of going private, democracy, individual liberty, the right to protect one's own culture, and, most importantly of all, freedom of speech. Things that I'm against: diversity quotas, mass immigration of economic migrants, communism and socialism, the alt-right, the far left, Nazism, government or corporate control of the internet, the mainstream media and dishonest partisan journalism as a whole, Antifa, violence for political gain, war unless absolutely necessary, radical Islam, the Islamification of Western culture, racism, religious discrimination, governments holding too much power, privilege for certain people based on race, gender and so on, and basically anything that involves any kind of restriction on a person's individual liberty. Those aren't going to be discussed as a whole in this video. It was just a very shorthand statement to let everyone know what my stances are on certain things. I class myself as a centre-left libertarian, but very few people see me as such. I get called far left, far right, alt-right, and I've even been called Nazi on many an occasion. So am I left or am I right? Depends who you ask, because at this point I'm completely done trying to keep up. You could always ask my Antifa cousin. Him and his friends all think I'm the devil incarnate because I dared utter the phrase, "Tommy Robinson is not a racist." That's a useful tool, by the way. I call it the Tommy test. Ask someone, is Tommy Robinson a racist? It's a great way of figuring out whether or not a person actually does any of their own research or just believes everything the media parrots at them. The point of this video was mainly to point out things I've noticed that seem to be engineered for the purpose of stifling, censoring and silencing anyone who does not follow the far left narrative, and how this process is being sped up through the far left's abuse of power and underhanded tactics, and how both of said things are treated with the biggest double standard by the far left themselves, mainstream media and the ruling platforms. But before I get into it, I need to talk about the two major players in all of it: the far left and the far right. The SJWs, Antifa, feminists, communists, socialists, regressives, progressives, gender benders, or whatever you want to call them, although they don't all know each other, agree with each other on everything, or even work together, they do all fall under the category of the left, just on different points of that side of the political spectrum, which obviously can vary between specific groups or individuals. What these people will tell you their primary goal is an equal and fair society, but a quick glance at some of the things that they're pushing for will help you realise that the end goal would be anything but. They say that they're sick of living in a white-dominated society and want to bring an end to the fabled white privilege and also an end to discrimination. What they want to do in order to combat this is to adopt things such as diversity quotas, affirmative action, legal enforcement of gender terms, special consideration for university placements and public services, and removing free speech so that none of these things can be criticised and to protect the feelings of those involved. When you look at any of these things, all of them involve giving special consideration, or an upper hand, to specific people based on their race, gender, and sexual orientation. So privilege. The very thing that they are angry about white people having and constantly attacking white people for, they want that very thing for themselves. It's just one of their many horrendous double standards. I'm obviously massively against this, as it actively encourages the discrimination of white people, and I would much rather we were all just treated equally and that people are given jobs, university placements and so on based on their abilities, skills and merits, and that race, gender or orientation should play absolutely no factor in this whatsoever. I also feel that to have such little faith in the abilities of people of colour, gays, trans and so on, that you feel that they cannot accomplish anything without being granted a massive handicap is quite frankly quite a bigoted opinion. Such laws aren't even required in the UK in the first place, because in the UK it is illegal to deny such things to someone based on their race, gender or orientation. Unless it's straight white people though. Got to meet that diversity quota. The main thing about the far left that really sets them out from everyone else is the methods that they apply in order to achieve this end goal. The majority of these methods are absolutely reprehensible at best. They can be basic things ranging from misrepresentation, spreading lies, hate campaigns, cherry-picking facts, refusing to meet and debate, stretching up to more serious things such as doxing, threats, false flagging down channels, videos and Twitter accounts, deplatforming people and media campaigns with the purpose of libelous defamation, all the way to the far end, which is just barbaric violence on anyone that they have deemed the enemy for simply holding the wrong opinion. Antifa's violence is proof of how far to the left the establishment is swung. Can you imagine if Antifa, violent radical communists, tried to pull any of this shit from the 50s to the 80s? The CIA would have rounded them all up, black-bagged them and shipped them off to some black site prison, and they would never have been heard from again. The main tactic that they've adopted is to simply brand someone as a racist or a Nazi. Two words that used to hold such power have been reduced to nothing but white noise to intellectual ears, but when it comes to many people on the far left and the media themselves, when someone has been branded a racist or a Nazi, it is considered gospel. Meaning that once a person has been branded any of these terms, even when they do not in any way meet the requirements, any form of treatment towards this person is completely justified, and the things that they say, no matter how logical or fact-based, are considered worthless. Funnily enough, this exact dehumanisation tactic was the exact same one that the Nazis used to justify their treatment of Jews. All of these tactics are very easy fixes for when you cannot prove someone wrong or defeat them in debate. Which is why they so often use them, is when you have such putrid but effective tactics at your disposal, you don't have to be right. When you do such terrible things as this, it stops becoming a case of who can present the best argument and becomes a case of who can be the most morally bankrupt. What cements this even more is not only the fact that the mainstream media either ignores or celebrates the far left's underhandedness and violence, but at the very root, these tactics are promoted and encouraged among the left. They seem to think that they're justified in their actions because in their minds they're fighting an evil that is trying to prevent the utopia they wish to bring in. Rubbing shoulders with the right people is also a great way to earn a get-out-of-jail-free card for your shitty behaviour. But despite how disgusting and morally devoid the far left's tactics are, they work. They really do work. Deplatforming people, doxing them and placing them or their families in danger, getting them fired, attacking their income and discrediting them through lies has worked time and time again to remove powerful opponents from the argument and earns the far left a victory, albeit a very dishonest one. And I actually shudder at the thought of these types of people holding any kind of institutional power. I'm not saying that no one on our side has never done any of these things. There are those that absolutely have. We, however, don't condone it, and we will disavow such things and encourage others among us to apologise and make amends for committing such acts and to refrain from committing them altogether, out of a sense of decency and respect for our fellow man, no matter what our fellow man's opinions may be. But since we refuse to adopt such tactics, it means that when it comes to the far left, we're at a huge disadvantage. It's funny though how our sense of decency might be what kills us. A lot of the far left refuse to acknowledge these terrible acts, their failings or lack of understanding, because for a lot of them they're beyond the point of being able to save face, and after everything they've said and done, it's too late to back out now. They're in too deep. They now no longer care about decency or whether their ideology will truly benefit society as a whole. They care about winning. Pride can be a dangerous thing. The nationalists, the identitarians, the alt-right, the alt-light, the religious right and so on are treated very differently from the far left by the media. The far left are often pictured as the noble warriors striving for an equal utopia, and the far right are pictured as ignorant racist bigots. Both of these opinions are, for the very most part, untrue, but are continually perpetuated by the partisan media. But when it comes to the media, the right are easily the most misrepresented side of the political spectrum and vastly shown in the negative. A lot of areas of the right praise patriotism and a love for your country, but many areas of it I just can't agree with because I personally feel that a lot of the factors they want to push compromise individual liberty and equality, just like the far left's ideals do. The religious right want things like the church to have a say in government policies, they don't want gay marriage, they want gays to be shipped off to pray away the gay camps, and don't want to allow sex before marriage, and so on and so forth. And I'm sure most of you agree with me when I say fuck that noise. One of the primary areas surrounding the right is their stance towards immigration. Some want it more controlled, some want it shut down altogether. I don't agree with a complete end to immigration, but I do want it to be much more controlled so that we aren't letting radical jihadists into our country and so our economy and job market can actually keep up with it. One thing as well that I don't support is us leeching university graduates, doctors and other specialists from poorer nations. I feel us constantly taking that country's best and brightest will in the long term hinder the development of that country. Great minds build nations, but us constantly taking them does a disservice to the country that we're taking them from. When it comes to immigrants coming to the UK, if you work, obey the law, respect our culture and assimilate, then we won't have a problem. A lot of areas of the right support patriotism, service to your country and a certain pride of self, which I do agree with, just not in the identitarian sense, but they also support defending their culture, be it the culture of their nation or white culture, and most people scream at that as racist, but it's not. Everyone, regardless of their nation or their colour, has a right to protect their culture. Cultures, however, are not free from criticism. The right also don't have the luxury of a mainstream media constantly hiding or praising their kinds of shitty behaviour. If a member of the right simply utters the wrong thing, the press have an absolute field day in attacking that person. But when you move further along the spectrum, you get to the alt-right. Now, my perception of the end game of the alt-right is skewed, as I speak to many people who class themselves as alt-right, but there wasn't any full consistency in their answers. So I just decided to ask Millennial Woes himself. He confirmed that the end game of the alt-right would be an all-white ethno-state. All white countries would be completely white, anyone not white would be sent back to their respective country or at the very least segregated into their own communities within these nations, separate from white people. But the alt-right themselves would also respect this exact same paradigm in non-white countries. And it just isn't something that I can get on board with. Like, as the alt-right feels that races shouldn't mix through either communities, friendships, and especially not through intimate relationships. And I feel that just no one should have any say whatsoever in who you can and cannot form bonds with. Any kind of control over that is a breach of your individual liberty. As for uprooting immigrants who have built a life here, I can't get on board with that either. I feel the only time an immigrant who has been granted permanent residence should be ejected from the country is if they break the law in a serious way. If we've made an agreement with that person, and that person works, respects our laws, respects our culture, and assimilates, then we must honour that agreement. I refuse to punish someone who has done no wrong. As for the whole genetics argument, I'm probably going to regret commenting on this. I'm definitely not a geneticist, and I know this argument is causing an extremely heated atmosphere online right now, but all I will say on it is this. Our differences exist only on a physical level, and not mental. I do not in any way believe in inherent mental inferiority or superiority, and I'll leave it at that. Now, when it comes to skewing data, doxing, cherry-picking facts and hate campaigns, the alt-right are guilty of that too, just not on as high a level as the left. The right and alt-right absolutely do this, just nowhere near on the same scale as the far left. The right and alt-right aren't angels. They have done some of the exact same things the left have done, just they very often vie for a more noble approach and encourage its members not to resort to underhanded tactics, but to further their ideology through their arguments. Because of this, no matter what you think of the alt-right's ideas, they present them honestly. Meaning the left themselves are the ones making the alt-right more appealing to the people who feel constantly under threat by the far left, who want to take away their freedom of speech and punish them simply for their race, gender and sexual orientation. You filthy white male. I've spoken to many alt-righters who've all said that the reason they joined the ranks of the alt-right is because they feel their identity, culture and freedom is being threatened by the far left's disgraceful tactics and the things that the far left is encouraging, such as mass immigration. And the far left only serve to further bolster the alt-right's position by constantly giving them the ammunition that they need. Every time a migrant rapes someone, every time the police give a lenient sentence to a migrant, every time someone in a MAGA hat gets punched, every time someone gets arrested for criticising Islam, and every terror attack just adds another bullet to the ammo belt of the alt-right. The alt-right aren't rising through their own merits alone. They're being carried to the top by the far left. My relationship with the far left is essentially they hate me, to the point where my own family member has stopped talking to me. I know I joke and I make fun a lot while I argue with people, but that usually results in the left false flagging my videos, calling me a bunch of names and blocking me. I wouldn't mind having a friendly relationship with them, but because I disagree with them, they aren't interested. With the alt-right, we argue, I make fun of them, they call me a skirt-wearing cuck, but then we have a normal conversation. I don't mind having a conversation with anyone on the political spectrum. However, in this train ride from left to right on the political spectrum, we reach the final destination, the end of the line, the Nazis. And I've spoken to actual Nazis, and no, I don't mean Trump voters or people with different opinions or any other kind of tame right-wing bullshit that the left usually brands as Nazi. I'm talking about actual Hitler-loving, Roman-saluting, swastika tattoo-having maniacs who actually, truly, genuinely want to kill Jews. I try to keep my cool, remain calm, and listen to their opinions and maintain a sort of polite demeanour so that I can have further conversations with them for the purpose of understanding them more. But it's hard. It's really hard to listen to the opinions of someone who has such complete disregard for their fellow man. And the only conclusions that I could come to regarding their ideology and why they had these beliefs were completely unbased fears that they wanted to resolve through acts of completely barbaric selfishness. I do want to talk to them because, as they say, know your enemy. But it's just so difficult trying to have a conversation with someone who would want a great number of the people that you care about killed. I know that the Nazis outright hate Jews, and I know a lot of the alt-right has a great mistrust for Jews, because a lot of them believe in the whole spiel of powerful Jews are trying to take over the world. My main problem with that is, yes, Jews who have power are trying to get more power, but it has nothing to do with the fact that they're Jews. It has to do with the fact that they have power. The only reason Jews are under such scrutiny is because of the spotlight Hitler put on them, and ever since then people have been saying beware of the Jews, so that spotlight is very much still on them. Which is why anytime anyone sees any evidence of this, you hear a bunch of autistic screeching. But if you look elsewhere, at basically anyone who has power, the main thing that they're all trying to get is more power. This isn't a Jew thing. Jews didn't invent this. It's not some secret Jewish exclusive practice, because we can witness this everywhere, from super rich individuals to political parties to corporations and to nations themselves. This isn't a Jew exclusive thing. All people who have power and wealth want more power and wealth. Being a Jew has nothing to do with it. But the main difference between left and right that I feel is the main contributing factor as to why the establishment over the last few years has had this dramatic shift in favour of the far left boils right down to two of the very basic fundamentals of these two political hemispheres. With the right, you serve your countrymen. This is encouraged. With the left, you serve the party. This is mandatory. You've all heard the phrase, everyone has the right to speak, no one has the right to a platform. To an extent, that may be true. No company, university and so on legally has to give you a platform. But even on the occasions that they do, that doesn't stop Antifa turning up, violently assaulting people and lighting fires to the point where that platform, for the safety of itself and the staff, has to drop you, or petitioning to a publisher to get your book withdrawn shows that although you don't have the right to a platform, even if you are given one, the far left will still try to take it from you. Our main issue, being from the counter-narrative, being from the group that wants to see facts, logic, ethics and true equality prevail, is that the far left, supported by the powers that be, do not want us to have a voice and want to take away our ability to speak, because we are actively fighting against the system of control they want to place upon us. This means that any kind of newspaper or online publication will actively attack and defame us at every turn, which we've seen happening on a grand scale, and as every one of us already knows, the media always have the state's interests at heart. It is the entire purpose of the media. News networks and newspapers do not like the fact that more people listen to us and trust us more than them. This undermines their control of the public opinion, which in turn undermines the control of the government. We are against the far left ideology that the state wants, and more people listen to us, which makes us a huge problem. One of the key things that we have is audience. This can only be achieved by using the forms of media that have the largest access to audience, the biggest obviously being YouTube, and then other forms such as Twitter and Facebook, as well as Patreon as a way for us to receive funding for our work. These platforms have over and over again been proven to fall politically to the far left. They've never outright stated this, but given the things that they've done and said, the inference is just so damn strong that it's almost a guarantee. Twitter and Facebook constantly ban accounts belonging to members of our community over the most minor things and refuse to review the tweets or posts. I can remember I got into an argument with a girl who was spewing absolute racist abuse about white people, saying fuck white people and so on. I called her fat, and I'm the one that got banned. Those fuck white people tweets are still up though. It's okay though. We've known Twitter is racist towards white people for a very long time. YouTube itself has constantly targeted our channels. Even right now, many channels are being demonetised en masse and struck down due to YouTube's new rules where videos can be placed in a limited state, in other words, totally ghosted, even if they don't break the rules. YouTube have become so brazen about wanting to get rid of us that they will in fact now just outright admit that they are shifting the goalposts to target us specifically. Patreon itself are even shutting down people's accounts, attacking their income. This coupled with YouTube's mass demonetisation means that people who are making a living on YouTube will now have to get a job to support themselves, meaning that they will have less time to make content, so the content they make will either be less frequent, less better researched, lower in quality, or just vanish altogether. And this is what these platforms want. They want us gone. They don't want us speaking against the narrative that they are pushing. They do not have any respect at all for freedom of speech unless you are saying the things that they want you to say, which is the exact same thing most tyrannical governments fucking do themselves. This puts us again at a massive disadvantage. There has even been insider information leaked by an ex-Google employee under the pseudonym Emmett that Google has instructed YouTube to secretly remove anti-PC, anti-communist and anti-Islam content from search results. Google, one of the biggest internet giants, is trying to control what the public can and can't see to further its own political ideology. Due to the massive bias of these platforms, I've branched out to other platforms that do not hold this bias or have made a commitment to free speech. I'll try my best to be active on these platforms and gather a larger audience, but obviously the platforms that I'm going to be most active on are the ones where I have the bigger access to audience. I've included links to my VidMe, my Minds account, my Twitch account, my Twitter account and so on down below. I've also included my PayPal donation link and also my Patreon link will be there as well. It's just, at the moment, there isn't really a viable alternative to Patreon and to be honest, I would be pretty fucked without it. The primary platforms that we need to communicate with our audiences are actively trying to prevent us from doing so because we go against their narrative. They are the far left and they dominate and control the major platforms. So what can we do? They change the rules, so we alter our content to stay within the rules, so then they change the rules again, and so on and so on. But when they realise that they can't get rid of us that way, they just go, you know what, fuck it, we want you gone. So we're going to throttle, demonetise, not show your videos in recommended, ghost your videos, give you strikes and ignore your appeals, shut down your channels and basically make your lives on here an absolute living hell until you do what we want and just disappear.
I have seen firsthand how the system is rigged against our citizens.
What I really don't understand is the fear that people have of giving certain people a platform. I don't get the notion that people think the majority of the public are that stupid that any information they hear, they just immediately believe it. The population isn't as stupid as you think. Despite universities trying their hardest to brainwash people with far left ideology, more and more people are treating everything that gets presented to them with fact-checking and critical analysis. People treat all sources of information this way, regardless of where it's coming from. If it's coming from the far left, the far right, us, everywhere. Which means if anyone presents any information that is false or presents an idea that has easily identifiable factors that would affect society in a negative way, people will notice and be vocal about it, which will make more and more people aware of it. And due to people behaving in this way, if anything is presented to society that would not benefit society, is unethical, or would be a detriment to a certain class, group, race, or anything like that, society will reject it. And that type of behaviour is something that should be encouraged. People who constantly fact check and research information that is presented to them are the types of people our universities should be creating, and this behaviour is something that should be celebrated and encouraged. When it comes to any ideals that are fascist, racist, or totalitarian in nature, if we have a populace of educated, logical, critically thinking people, then none of these things would be adopted in modern society. People are scared of giving Nazis a platform, but why? Even if our population was extremely stupid, anyone with half a brain cell can easily see their ideology is an extremely bad idea. Give a Nazi a platform, give them a prime time slot on national TV and let them open their mouth and watch what happens. Hi there, it's the Nazi party here. Well, first we're going to gas all the Jews, followed by the gays, the gypsies and a bunch of other people that we don't like. Then we're also going to kill all of the old people and the disabled because they're a drain on the state. We're going to ban pretty much all movies, books, art and very, very many of your hobbies because we've decided that they're degenerate. You also might end up in a concentration camp yourself or treated as an inferior class if your genetics aren't pure enough, so make sure that you get a DNA test before you vote. Also, because of the things that we want, NATO, America, the EU, pretty much every country in the fucking world actually, is going to declare war on us because what we are doing is fucked up, so we most likely are going to get bombed into oblivion. Vote for me in 2020, my dudes. And watch the people laugh. They'll think that this is a comedy skit. No one will take this guy seriously. They will think it's a complete joke. How could anyone think that any of this in any way can benefit a society? He would get laughed off the fucking stage and the entire population would absolutely reject every single thing about his ideology because we've seen what Nazism does. We have a fucking huge example from history that has books, writings, data, movies, TV shows, an absolute wealth of information about the sheer suffering this man's ideology would bring, and it would never, ever again gain any kind of foothold within the institution. If our educational establishments produce critically thinking, fact-loving, logical people, then nothing of this sort would ever be adopted into society. So let Nazis have a platform, let them open their mouth, then smile as that platform slowly turns into a gallows as they hang themselves with their own words. Have faith in your countrymen. Logic will prevail. Freedom of speech is slowly but surely being taken away from us either through law or through social consequences that are engineered and strongly encouraged by the media. First, we can look at the legality. If someone is calling for violence and targeted attacks, I would have an understanding as to why the police would get involved, but it's become much more than that. The restrictions on free speech have been stretched to anyone being critical of social problems being created by the things the government is doing, primarily mass immigration and Islam. If you say anything derogatory about immigrants or Islam, or quote crime statistics relating to immigrants or Islam, or have any harsh criticisms about the barbaric tenets of Islam or Sharia law, you can be arrested. And we have examples of this happening. Not encouraging violence, not encouraging hatred, simply making people aware of information and your opinion of that information. And to discourage you from doing such things, police forces regularly tweet out these extremely Orwellian statements, basically telling everyone, say anything we don't like and you will be arrested. It's even at the point where jokes, parody and satire have their true intention completely ignored, and you can be looking at time in prison. Police very often keep the line between speech and hate speech blurred and use that to their advantage. Police love a grey area when it comes to the law. It means they can choose to prosecute or not prosecute at their discretion, which gives them free rein to execute a double standard. There's also the case of targeted harassment by the police, which we've seen on a frightening level with the police's targeted harassment of Tommy Robinson and his family. As for social consequences, these are created as a fallback for when they can't get you with breaking the law. These can be things such as losing your job or losing the ability to ever get a job in the future, defaming your character and receiving hate from the general public. It's a really sorry state of affairs when uttering a perfectly reasonable phrase such as, "I do not want radical Islamists living in my country," is enough to have your life ruined and have you forever branded as a racist, when Islam isn't even a fucking race. But we can use these attacks on free speech to our advantage, because it gives us an indication of the people worth listening to. If the state is actively trying to silence someone, it means the things that they are saying undermine the state's power and the hold they have in the public. It means the things they have to say are very important. And as we've seen throughout history, governments who've removed freedom of speech often did so to stop people being critical of them and bringing attention to their corrupt actions. Under dictatorships, taking away free speech was one of the first things that they did when they came to power. Point being, any government who has taken away freedom of speech to any extent has never done so for honest reasons. Removing a man's tongue only makes everyone more interested in what he has to say. All of the factors I've discussed in this video and the drastic changes in the online and social environment over the last few years have made me raise an eyebrow. All of these things feel connected to me in some way, and I just want to list a few of the main points that have me genuinely worried. The far left adopting and encouraging underhanded and violent tactics to silence the counter-narrative, with such acts being praised or hidden by the media and excused by the police. Universities who are supposed to be politically neutral pushing a far-left dogma on students who are the next generation. Privilege and special consideration being given to people based on gender, race and sexual orientation, except white people. Racism towards white people ignored, racisms to people of colour harshly punished. Mass misrepresentation of counter-narrative and right-wing by a heavily partisan and politicised far-left media. Far-left dominated internet platforms actively trying to censor and remove counter-narrative views from their platforms. Arrests in media encourage social consequences for anyone critical of Islam, Islamic terror and mass immigration. Mass immigration continuing despite factual data proving its economic, social and criminal damage to society. The death of free speech. Something is happening. I don't know what, I don't know why, and I don't know what the end game is here, but all of these things to me feel linked. I feel that the next few years are going to bring in a far-left ideology that has no interest in individual liberty, freedom of speech, the preservation of culture, or public safety. Some tinfoils might say that the government is using the far-left as pawns to push in an ideology that will give them full social Orwellian control, but I maybe wouldn't push it to that extreme, but then again, I don't even have the answer as to why all of this is happening. And I'm not really sure what we can do to stop it. All I know is, we should all be worried.